And we'll throw it over to you, Dan. You want to just introduce yourself, and then we can get into the presentation.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me to this week's Lunch and Learn. Appreciate being here and speaking with all of you. I'm actually very excited about this specific topic. One of the sort of programs, or actually something that we were legislated to do by the governor, was to create a strategic plan around the rollout and expanded access to school meals across the entire state. It's a daunting challenge. In our public schools, we have over 1.3 million students, but that does not account for the students that we have in our charter schools, our private schools, our religious schools. So there's even more students that this plan is actually trying to cover. As I'm sure you're well aware, there have been quite a number of challenges as of recent in terms of nutrition programming from the USDA. Challenges to programs like SNAP, changes to Medicaid only mean that school meal programs become so much more important. They really become front line in ensuring that our kids are getting fed, that they're getting fed nutritious meals. And for so many of our kids, school meals are the only meals they get each day. Now, there's a changing trend here in the United States. Originally, the school lunch program was created back in the 50s and 60s as a response to our young military men coming into the military underweight. So surprisingly enough, they wanted to make sure that our young men, as they were drafted, were more physically fit and ready to serve. So that's one of the reasons that the school lunch program was created in the first place. And of course, that expanded to school breakfast in latter years. And now we're seeing the advent of school dinners being served under programs, not necessarily under the National School Lunch Program. That's actually done under a different program known as CACFP, the Child and Adult Care Feeding Program. But there are so many different ways in which we work with our schools to ensure we are feeding our kids, to ensure that no child is hungry, because we know a hungry child can't learn. So, as Patrick said, I'm Dr. Dan Dychwald. I am with the New Jersey office of the Food Security Advocate. I serve as the public policy lead for the OFSA team. So my focus is really on both state and national legislation, understanding, analyzing impact, as well as working with legislators here across New Jersey in helping them understand the impact of legislation, providing them data around the potential to introduce legislation, as well as support their efforts. So again, we do a lot of different things, and I do a lot of different work here at the state. I come from an advocacy background, much like Lisa Pitts, for those of you that know Lisa. I originally was with the New Jersey Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, where I was the public policy lead for the agency, working on state level and national advocacy. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into my presentation. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And let's go ahead and start our show. So for those of you unfamiliar with the New Jersey Office of the Food Security Advocate, the office itself was created through legislation in 2021. We are a part of the governor's office, where we serve in an advisory role to the administration and the legislature, while also partnering with philanthropy, supporting multi-sectorial partnerships in communities across the state. We are physically based in the New Jersey Department of Agriculture, and we are currently supporting multiple state agency efforts. So we really work with many agencies across the state, including the Department of Health, Department of Human Services, Department of Agriculture, Department of Education. We work with economic development, So we really have our hands in a lot of different work across the state. Food insecurity is not specific just to agriculture. There's so many programs being developed and managed and administered by various departments across the state. And again, we work with all of them. When we think about food insecurity, the NJOFSA team has adopted what we feel is a more expanded definition of food security. And this definition really guides the work that we do here at the New Jersey Office of the Food Security Advocate. Our definition is food security is a situation that exists when all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. This was based on a definition from the Committee on World Food Security. It's based around 6 pillars of agency, stability, sustainability, access, availability, and utilization. When we think about this definition, it is so apropos when we talk about school meals, because school meals is truly one way in which we assure that our students have access to safe and nutritious meals that meet their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life, but also to ensure that they are prepared for the challenges of the classroom. So let's talk about some different school meal programs. And the one that comes to mind first, of course, is the National School Lunch Program. As I stated earlier, that program was first funded to ensure that our young men were ready to serve the military upon graduating from high school as a part of the draft. And finding that many of our men were malnourished, the National School Lunch Program was funded. The National School Lunch Program, while many think it's open only to public schools, that's a misnomer. Any school in the state of New Jersey that is willing to meet the requirements of the program, most of which are specifically tied to the nutritional quality of the food being served, can participate in the National School Lunch as well as the National School Lunch Program. So one of the programs that we're really working hard to promote to our non-public schools is this program, because we do know we have a number of students that are eligible for free or reduced meals, but are attending non-public schools thinking that they're ineligible. The National School Lunch and Breakfast Program provides a federal reimbursement to enrolled schools based upon whom the meal is served to. So a child is deemed eligible for free, reduced, or full pay meals based upon their household income. Now, in New Jersey, even though we have a category known as reduced, it's again a misnomer, because several years ago, the state eliminated the reduced price category. Any child in the state that qualifies for a reduced price meal gets their meal for free. And while the school district still receives a reimbursement from the federal government based at the reduced rate, the state makes up the difference so that they are actually getting reimbursed at the free rate for that child's meal. So that's one of the great things about New Jersey, is that we did expand that to ensure that every child eligible for reduced actually gets that meal free. And then, of course, last year, the governor signed an expansion of the Working Class Families Anti-Hunger Act, which increased eligibility across the state. So households that were making up to 224% of the federal poverty line are now eligible for free meals across the state of New Jersey. And again, that applies to every public school, every private school, religious school, charter school that's enrolled in the National School Lunch and School Breakfast programs. So again, it's a great way of making sure our kids are getting fed a nutritious meal at a minimum of 1 time per day with lunch. As even those schools that are doing lunch, we still have several that are doing lunch but not doing breakfast. So our goal is to expand breakfast to more schools across the state. As I indicated earlier, the meals being served must meet the nutritional standards set by the USDA. And the school may also be eligible for other matching funds, including the farm to school funding, which was recently cut by the federal government. However, there's the potential that farm to school could be reinstated under the Farm Bill. So again, I just want to make sure that schools understand that while they are going to get a reimbursement from the USDA, enrolling in the National School Lunch Program may actually make them eligible for additional forms of funding. And again, that is to any school in the National School Lunch Program, regardless of public, private, religious, etc. And then for a school to enroll, they would actually work with the Division of Food and Nutrition here in the Department of Agriculture. And each year, FNS has an enrollment period where they actually will process the applications for those schools interested in starting up school lunch and school breakfast. It is a bit of a challenging task in terms of the paperwork that needs to be done, but the payoff is huge, especially if we have a school opting into both breakfast and lunch. That means that so many more of our New Jersey State students are getting access to meals, potentially free meals, if they are below that 224% threshold of the federal poverty line. So again, it's a really great program. There are really very few restrictions in terms of the nutritional standards. Again, they are set every couple of years by the USDA. But you also have the support of the Division of Food and Nutrition. There is the New Jersey School Nutrition Association, as well as a national association. So there's a lot of opportunities for schools to enroll if they are not currently. And one other thing I want to say, especially in Bergen County, we have a number of public schools that are not enrolled in these programs. If they, based upon the demographics of the school, they may not need to enroll in this program. And so we have almost 400 schools across the state that that are not a part of the National School Lunch or Breakfast Program. We don't know why. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer if we can make sure that more of those kids are getting access to free and reduced priced meals. So again, if you have schools within your county or that you work with that are not enrolled in the National School Lunch Program and you think it would be a benefit, talk with them, set up a meeting, make sure they understand the benefit of this program and making sure our kids have access to healthy meals. In terms of getting into the program, once the school is enrolled, families will complete an application each year to determine their eligibility for free and reduced meals. A family or a household can also be deemed eligible for free and reduced meals through direct certification, meaning that the household is already enrolled in a means-tested program such as SNAP, Medicaid. You may also have a child that is a foster child or qualifies under McKinney-Vento. Foster children and children covered under McKinney also automatically qualify for free and reduced meals without completing an application. So the application is the primary method. Direct certification is, again, a great methodology. And because New Jersey recently opted in to Medicaid Direct Cert, we expanded the number of kids who are directly certified. And again, those foster children and those children covered under McKinney-Vento, those are all ways in which a child can be deemed eligible for the school lunch and school breakfast program. Now, one of the great things about school lunch, yes, the USDA does provide a reimbursement, but we can actually make it better. There's something called the Community Eligibility Provision, which was established by the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act of 2010. It allows eligible school districts to serve meals at no cost to all enrolled students without collecting household applications. It uses what we refer to as the identified student percentage. This is the percent of students that are categorically eligible, meaning they are already enrolled in a means-tested program, they're directly certified, they're a foster child, they're a McKinney-Vento child. That percentage of students based or against the entire enrollment determines what that recognized or that identified student percentage is. The minimum is 25%. The government then takes, or the USDA, takes that ISP figure and they multiply it times 1.6. That's our multiplier. That then becomes the reimbursement amount. So that means that that school district, let's say you've got a 50% of your school is an ISP of 50%. That means that over 80% of the meals being served are done at no charge to the school itself, and the school only has to cover that portion that is not, which can be very, very small. If a school district is at 62.5% or higher, that means every child in the school, regardless of income, gets free meals. So community eligibility is a really amazing way of expanding access to free meals for schools. And this year we had almost 400 districts eligible for community eligibility across the state of New Jersey. It's the largest number of schools we have ever had eligible. And we're still waiting for the final numbers to determine which schools opted in. But we are so optimistic about what this means to our kids and for the state as a whole. The other option is what we refer to as Provision 2, adopted in 1980 as a part of the National School Lunch Program. Like community eligibility, it allows schools to serve meals to every child at no charge, and it reduces the application burden to once every 4 meals. What it does is every 4 years you do what's called setting like your standard, or you set your allowance. And so let's say in a given year, you serve, let's say 100 meals just to make it easier. 80 of those meals are free, 10 are reduced, 10 are full pay. So rather than collecting applications for the next 4 years, for that time period, every time you submit meal counts to the USDA for reimbursement, 80% will be at the free rate, 10% will be at the reduced, and 10% will be at the full pay. So basically, it removes the administrative burden of collecting applications every year, drops it down to 4 years. And for districts that have low rates of direct certification, for instance, you may have a district where you have a lot of students that are, new immigrants to the U.S. They may not qualify for some of these programs. You may have a high number of undocumented members of the community. You may have actually a higher reimbursement under Provision 2 than you would under community eligibility. So again, this is another way of expanding the number of kids that are getting free meals in a school while reducing the administrative burden to the school itself. Some enrollment facts regarding community eligibility here in the state of New Jersey. Multiple school districts, including multiple religious schools, are currently enrolled in community eligibility, including schools in Camden, Lakewood, Patterson, and Trenton. Medicaid direct certification, what I mentioned earlier, raised the identified student percentages significantly this year. As I said, we've never had more schools and school districts eligible, meaning that more kids are going to be eligible for those free meals. Unfortunately, New Jersey ranks near the bottom for CEP adoption. Last year, we ranked 47th in the country. We do really, really poorly. And we have no schools, none, enrolled in Provision 2. We are literally giving up federal funds because our schools are not taking advantage of these programs, meaning our kids that should be getting free meals are not. So it's a challenge. We really need to make sure that we're getting these kids in these school districts enrolled. And, here's something that's really going to be mind-blowing. This is using data from the school year 23-24. Less than 75% of our students that are eligible for free meals actually partake. So if we've got 1,000 kids that are eligible for free meals, only 750 of them are actually taking advantage of that. So we have even lower participation among students eligible for reduced, less than 60%. And here's the funny thing. Public schools fare worse as compared to our charters and religious schools. We've got actually higher participation among those schools that are participating in the National School Lunch Program. And to complicate things, the incidence of childhood poverty in New Jersey reached 14% in 2021. We have a need. We're going to talk later about summer EBT, which last year sent out 711,000 cards. There is a need here in New Jersey. We have kids that are eligible for these programs that are not taking advantage. So we are missing the boat, and we've got kids that are sitting in our classrooms hungry. This chart sort of gives you an idea of participation by school type in both lunch and breakfast. You'll see that this first dot, this is lunch for all the schools. And we look at all meals, free, reduced, and full pay. So again, you do tend to see higher participation among those children that are eligible for free. But when you look at reduced, we see such a drop and such an erratic pattern for all the other meals. Again, there's just so many opportunities to be had here in New Jersey. So what I really want to send the message home, New Jersey schools and families are leaving federal dollars on the table. We need to increase the spend down of federal funds, meaning we need more schools to enroll in these programs. We need more schools enrolling in the school lunch and school breakfast program. And we need parents to go to their schools and say, listen, we qualify for these programs. Why are we not enrolling? We're missing out. We are giving up funds to other states. I mean, New Jersey pays more into the federal government than we take. And it's because we're not taking advantage of programs such as this. The next program I want to talk about, as I mentioned earlier, is CACFP, the Child and Adult Care Feeding Program. Similar to the school lunch and school breakfast program, it provides reimbursement for nutritious meals and snacks to eligible children enrolled for care at participating child care centers, for children and youth participating in after-school care programs, and also children residing in emergency shelters. Many schools have expanded the way that they use CACFP to not just offer snacks in after-school programs, but in some schools across the state, we're now seeing the introduction of dinner. Because again, for many of these kids, they are literally dropped off and are spending the entire day at school until a household member comes to pick them up. So CACFP is being used to provide an even larger meal in the latter hours of the day to actually get these kids 3 meals, 3 nutritious meals during the day while they are at school. The qualifications for the CACF program is households with incomes at or below 130% of the poverty line are eligible for free meals. Between 130 and 185%, those households are eligible for reduced. Eligibility is always determined by the school. So just like with school lunch and school breakfast, those school meal applications are processed by the school district. It's not done at the state level. It's always done in-house. So once the institution determines eligibility, they then submit their paperwork to the state to ensure they are getting the proper reimbursements. Again, it's a great way of expanding the number of kids eligible. It's another way of extending meals beyond lunch. And one thing I want to point out, I cannot tell you the number of daycare centers that have reached out to my office stating they are so challenged with making sure that they have the money to provide healthy meals. And my first question to them is always, are you in the CACFP program? And most of them have no idea what I am talking about. So it's extremely important that we build visibility and awareness about these programs with our early child care providers because they are critical, not just in supporting our families, but also ensuring the kids in their care are getting healthy meals.
And Dan, if I could just add real quick on the CACFP. So in Bergen County, we do have at least one organization and that I know of that operates a food pantry. It's the Meadowlands YMCA, which a lot of you folks on the call may be familiar with, but they do run a CACFP after school program, and I think probably some of the families that come into the pantry, that's a way for them to find out about these programs that exist. So if anybody wants an example of how this is working in Bergen County, she's not on the call, but happy to refer you to our good friend Amanda Scully from the Meadowlands Y to talk about how that works.
Thanks for sharing that. So one of the challenges with CACFPs is CACFP requires the daycare center to have a sponsoring organization. That's traditionally the biggest challenge. But one of the things we've been really great here in New Jersey with doing is finding sponsors and getting more organizations to become sponsors. Pat brought up the YMCA. So the Y Alliance has recently become a CACFP sponsor to support all the Ys across the state. So having that sponsor is critical because they basically assure and assume administration and financial responsibility for the daycare centers and institutions under them. Now, like school lunch and school breakfast, at the state level, CACFP is administered by the Division of Food and Nutrition within the Department of Agriculture. And because I know so many of you know Lisa Pitts, Lisa has been like the pioneer, the Pied Piper of CACFP in our public schools and all of our schools. She has been going to schools across the state, talking with them about expanding and offering CACFP as part of their after-school programs, and even discussing the expansion of dinner with many of the districts that are serving lower income populations. So Lisa's a great contact for questions regarding CACFP. You can also reach out specifically to the Division of Food and Nutrition, or feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to connect you with the Division of Food and Nutrition. And that way you can meet with them, ask questions. Again, this is a vital program that really goes far because not only does CACFP work with our children, it also, as the name says, works with our adult care centers. So this program could be extended to work with adult programs as well. It's a different set of rules with the adult programs. But again, this is a great way of ensuring that more New Jersey families have access to meals. Now, our last program is Summer EBT, which I hope many of you at this point are familiar with. We are in year 2 of this federal program that was launched in 2023, with the first sets of cards going out in the summer of 2024. The Summer EBT program gives each child an EBT card preloaded with $120 for the summer, which comes out to $40 per month. The goal is that it provides families with an ability to pay for lunches, to actually purchase groceries during those summer months when schools may be closed and not serving meals. So it's really a lifeline for these families. And so when you have a household with multiple children, they'll actually get multiple cards, one per eligible child. Now, unlike school lunch and school breakfast, which is capped at 224%, as this is a federal program, it's capped at 185%. So again, it's 185% cap based upon family income. The application process is actually much easier than it was in year 1 because the school meal application now includes the application for summer EBT. It's the same application that I showed you earlier. If a child is already certified, directly certified, because they're in a means-tested program, just like with school breakfast and school lunch, no application is necessary. It's automatic. And just like with school breakfast and school lunch, the school district determines eligibility. For this year, applications must be received by mid-August in order to receive a card for this summer. But the first batch of cards already went out, and in the first batch, there was over 690,000 cards. So we are really close to the numbers that we were at for last year, and cards continue to go out on a weekly basis. And as I mentioned, directly certified students need not complete an application because they are already deemed eligible through their participation in those programs. This is basically what the cards look like. The cards started going out in early June, and they're good for 120 days. So if you have a household that applies at the beginning of August and is accepted and doesn't get that card till mid-August, they still have 120 days to use that card. So again, that's the nice thing about the card. It's just not for that summer period. Its expiration is always based on when it was issued. And the card can be used with any grocer, any merchant that accepts SNAP EBT. However, I want to caution, summer EBT is not a part of SNAP. It's a completely different program. It's a different funding stream. I've had people call it summer SNAP, and I get it, but SNAP and summer EBT are completely separate. They are not synonymous, and we want people to understand that these are two separate programs. SNAP is basically for anyone, whereas summer EBT are just for our kids that would normally be getting school meals as a part of their typical school day. A couple of quick notes. Remember, the application is combined with the school meal application. It is not a separate application. In Bergen County, you already have a couple of school districts and schools that are in CEP. They're community eligible. So they're not using the school meal application. If your child attends a CEP school, community eligible school, you still need to complete an application unless your child is directly certified. That's a message that we've been really trying to get out to families because they may not be aware that they need to still complete that application. Accurate addresses are critical. We had a lot of cards returned last year, especially if the application was submitted, let's say back in September, the household is moved during the school year. So the school district needs to be updated with that address as soon as possible to ensure the card gets to the right place. We are looking at rolling out a portal for households where you can at least track the status of your card. It is not functional yet, but once it is, you'd be able to determine if your card was mailed out. And if it was and you have not received it, it very well could be an address issue. We also like to emphasize to our families that the application and the data are safe, secure, and confidential, especially because these applications are processed at the school level and are not sent to the state. So we know that there's a lot of concern right now around ICE and some of the things that are happening at the federal level. School meal data, school meal applications are done at the school level and are not transmitted. So again, those applications are safe, they are secure, and they are confidential. Now, for more information, you can go to nj.gov/summer EBT. But I do want to mention that this is one time where a family can quote unquote double dip. A child can get summer EBT and also participate in the summer meals program. So if you live in an area that is served by a site that provides summer meals, many times it's a local school. If you go to this website, fns.usda.gov/summer/site finder, you can find a list of summer feeding sites here in New Jersey. And again, the child can go to a summer meal site as well as participate in summer EBT. There is nothing that prevents them from participating in both programs. Again, it's a great way to stretch those dollars for those families that receive summer EBT. We know groceries can be expensive these days. So if you have the option to opt into summer meals, it's a great opportunity. And one of our recommendations in our strategic plan was to expand the number of summer feeding sites here across the state of New Jersey. It's something that we hope to discuss with the legislature as we move forward this year, now that we've got a budget in place. But we do want to expand the number of sites, especially those sites offering grab and go, because they do offer a lot of flexibility and convenience to our students and to our families. So that's everything. Are there any questions that I can answer?
And I just want to say thank you so much, Dan, for that incredibly informative presentation. I think folks here are taking home a lot of great info about these programs. And, before we get to the questions, I just want to say one thing. So this is, I think part of what we heard is, how to apply for these programs and the processes that students that may not be participating, so we want to make sure that you have that information for any families that you're working with that maybe don't know, or it was interesting to learn about the free versus reduced, where the burden to the family is really the same, and that's sort of a misconception. But I think this is where part of this is sort of advocacy, right? Like there are schools and districts that people are eligible and they aren't getting it, or they're not participating in certain things. This is where we're sort of relying on all of you to let us know, in the towns and areas that you're serving within the county, if you're hearing from families like, hey, my school doesn't participate in this, or I don't have enough information about these programs, we have connections within these school districts, with superintendents, with business administrators. So we really need that information so we can advocate for your families and all the families in these towns that are eligible for these services and are not getting them for whatever reason. So that's just the one point that I want to make. But we will open it up to questions for anybody that does have them. And I will share Dan's contact info with everybody. Again, I know that was a lot of information about different programs. So if there's things that pop into your head after we wrap up, totally fine. If you want to reach out to Dan directly, you will have his email. And are there any resources, Dan, that we can share with folks, maybe to have on hand at pantries if people have questions about these various programs? Happy to blast those out to everybody as well.
So for summer EBT, absolutely. There is a toolkit that was created by the Hunger Free New Jersey team. I can put the link for that in the chat. As for the other programs, there is information available on the USDA website as well as on the State Department of Agriculture's website here for the state of New Jersey. But one of the things I really do want to stress is, for those schools that are participating, we're able to capture the numbers of students that qualify for programs like the National School Lunch Program and, programs like Summer EBT. Our private schools, our charter schools, and our religious schools are really missing out because those kids also don't get summer EBT because they're not in a program. They're not in a school that's doing the National School Lunch Program. Now, if they're directly certified, for instance, they're participating in SNAP and they're school age, they will probably get summer EBT. And for those of you that don't know this, homeschoolers, if they are directly certified, also get summer EBT. But for those kids that are not, but they do have the incomes to meet free or reduced priced meals, we're missing out. Those kids are not getting access to these meals. And it's so important to ensure our kids are fed. So, for those of you that maybe work with pantries that may be affiliated with a religious institution, that may be affiliated with a religious school, we really want to get the word out. So many religious schools say to us, well, we can't apply, separation of church and state. We don't qualify. And that's a false. That's a fantasy. They can apply. I had one of my local schools reach out to me a couple of weeks ago, and I know so many people that went to the school, and they were like, hey, we were wondering about the National School Lunch Program. Do we qualify? And I'm like, why wouldn't you? They're like, well, we're a religious school. I said, doesn't matter. I'll connect you. When we set them up and they spoke with FNS, and they're going to be doing school meals as of this school year. So it was doable. And that's a school that's got over 700 kids. And I will say this, we've got, for those of you familiar with the Orthodox community down in Ocean County, Lakewood area, I can't tell you the number of those religious schools that participate in the National School Lunch Program. And in fact, many of them are doing CEP. They're on community eligibility, and every child is getting free meals. But when you look at our Catholic schools, minimal. We have very few schools that are practicing other religions. So they're missing the boat, thinking that they are not eligible. So I want to make sure that these schools understand their eligibility and take advantage of it because it's only going to benefit their kids. And that's what matters most. We want our kids fed. And so
Such an
I'm really on
important
a crusade.
Well, it's such an important, misconception to clear up too, I think, Dan. And if you could share, you gave me one list of schools that were not, they were eligible for CEP but not participating. But if you could share with me the schools that are, just if anybody gets in those towns has questions, we can share that information with them to make sure that they can get summer EBT. So, all right, any questions for Dan? And again, if you want to reach out to him separately about, specific cases or schools that you may be working with, that's also totally fine. And we do have the summer EBT toolkit in the chat, which we will include in the wrap up for this meeting as well.
Hey, Patrick, it's Karen. I have a quick question.
Sure. Go ahead, Karen.
I'm sorry, I came really late to this. I had a previous commitment. And you may have already covered this. My general question is, are schools required to participate? Public schools, I should say, required to participate?
Yes. If they have a certain percentage of students that qualify for free and reduced meals, they must participate. However, in New Jersey, we have about 400 schools that do not meet that definition and are not offering school meals. I mean, they may be offering it, but they're not enrolled in the National School Lunch Program, which means those kids that are eligible and attending those schools do not have access to free and reduced meals.
Okay. So do you know offhand what the percentage is? Like, how does a school track or figure out if they're required to?
The school business administrators know. I believe
Okay.
if they have less than 3% of their student body eligible for free and reduced, they can opt out. And we have several high income school districts, public school districts that meet that criteria.
Okay.
Yeah, and Karen, I would think up north where you guys are, it may be some districts that are a little bit borderline, but and I think we'll send out the presentation, and you can go back and watch the recording as well. Dan did outline some other ways that schools can participate and just different programs that people may not know about as well. So, but certainly. Again, a whole point of this is just like making sure that everybody's more informed about all these different programs that are on offer, and whether it's you guys as pantries or working with us, just making sure that our school districts know, hey, these programs are out there. If you are eligible, you should be providing these services to everybody that qualifies for them. So, we want to help you with that advocacy. So certainly if you have families with little kids, school age kids that you're serving, just try to ask them, hey, do you know about these programs? Are you participating? Do you know how to apply? The application, I believe, is universal, correct? It's not district specific.
Correct. Now, most districts will customize the application, but typically it's available on the district website. For just a quickie for Bergen County, some districts that are not participating: Demarest, Franklin Lakes, Glen Rock, Gloucester, Hohokus, Lyndhurst. Those are all districts that are not participating in National School Lunch.
Okay. Lyndhurst is a little bit of a surprise, but the other ones are definitely high income communities. But yeah, that is a little bit surprising to hear, because that's my area, Southern Bergen, and I think they that community is different than some of the other ones you mentioned.
I can send you the list.
Populated, yeah.
Yeah, I can send you the list. It's from 23-24. I'm waiting for the updated list for 24-25, but I can at least send you the list from 23-24.
Okay.
That would be great. Can I ask then one step further is, so what if, Dan, a school meets the threshold and is required to offer this and is not necessarily proactive about educating their incoming
The
students,
Department of
especially.
Education will be. So the Department of Ed monitors these reports along with the Division of Food and Nutrition through the Department of Agriculture. So if we suddenly are aware of a district that does meet the criteria, they'll be contacted by the state.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, there are a lot of safeguards in place. What used to be NJ Smart, they've just replaced NJ Smart with a new system. But the state does have guardrails in place to assure that all schools that are required to participate do participate.
Okay. That's good to know. Yeah. Well, we have a patrons in our pantry that aren't necessarily aware, as I'm sure you've talked about, that if they're especially new to the district and they don't know that these are benefits that they're eligible for, and the school is per se not doing a great job of communicating, especially to new incoming students. I just feel like it's a we have like a gap in that. So I feel like we try to do a good job at our pantry of talking about it, which is not always easy. But making sure that people are aware. And then the problem is too that some people don't feel empowered to go to the school and say, hey, I think my kid is, eligible for this, or what is this program? A lot of it are the parents don't speak English maybe well, and the kids who might be the liaison themselves, they don't think or know to like, oh, is there something like this I could get at my school? So I just am trying to like be as prepared to educate further our patrons to say, no, you have the right to bring this up and find out the process to participate.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about parents being vocal. We've done a lot of speaking around the state, talking with parents, and one of the pushbacks we get are they don't like the quality of the school meals. And one of the things I've said to parents is, well, you're the parents. Go to the school board meetings, make your voice be heard. If you want change, you are the actor. You are the one that creates change within your school districts. So, that's what's important. If you've got a school district that's eligible for community eligibility and the school is not opting in, make your voice be heard. Go to your school board meetings and say, why are we not opting into these programs? We could have every child getting a free meal.
Yeah, and I think too, the folks on this call are, pillars in their community, right? Like you can be giving a voice to some of those folks that maybe aren't comfortable for whatever reason, because you're seeing the need on a little bit of a broader scale as well. So I think, certainly we have the power in our positions to speak to some of those changes that maybe need to happen as well. So, Jessica, if you want to unmute, I see you got your hand raised.
Yes, it's just I have a little, no, I don't know if it's a question or just a little reflection. So as a pastor, sometimes we have a lot of community that needed those information. So this information is pretty vital for our community. So my question is how we can approach with the community. Yeah, I have a couple of families in Lyndhurst and so many districts around New Jersey, how they can be like educated so they can go to their schools and they say, hey, maybe they don't know about those programs, neither I, so just until now. So how as a pastor or as a leader of community, how I can help the community to know those programs to their school district?
So first off, we are working with the legislature to mandate that every school district put a link on their website to the school meal application that is prominently displayed in several languages to ensure that families know how to navigate to the application. And if the application is there, that means that the district is participating. You're absolutely right that so many households are not aware of this. And so we're also asking school districts to step up, asking them to put things on social media, send letters home to the families to remind them of the need to complete the school meal application. And we're also making sure that schools are communicating to families if their child is directly certified to communicate that in a letter stating, yes, for this school year, Bobby is directly certified, no application is needed, and Bobby will get free meals during this school year. We're trying to make sure that more districts follow through and are putting correspondence like that together and doing it in multiple languages as needed based upon the population served.
Okay.
And Jessica, what I think we can help with too, and some of what Dan is going to provide for the wrap up, and just materials that we're aware of also, is just making those available to you as well, so that if families do come in and have questions, you can walk through information about some of the things we're talking about, right? How to apply for these programs, how to see if the district is participating, and then based on where they are, sort of take the next steps from there. So we'll make sure that that is readily available for you and anybody else that wants it, to get out to families and talk through with them.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Dan? And thank you, Karen and Jessica, for those questions. All right. Seeing and hearing none, I think we will wrap up this afternoon's presentation. Thank you again, Dan, for this very informative presentation about these really, really critical programs that we need to get the word out about in all of our towns here in Bergen County. Again, if you have additional questions or are looking for materials and other things, we will provide his contact info in the wrap up for this meeting, along with the PowerPoint presentation and some other materials as well. But feel free to reach out to myself or Ryan if you have questions about this going forward also. So thank you, everybody, again for joining. And thank you again, Dan, for the presentation. We'll see everybody soon. We probably are going to schedule an office hours before the end of the month. So be on the lookout for some information about that. And remember, on August 6th, we're going to be doing our Hunger Action Month office hours as well. So please jump on there. We want to hear about your plans for Hunger Action Month in September. So we'll be sending information about those two meetings out very soon. But thank you, everybody, again. Enjoy the rest of your afternoons.
Thank you.
Thank you.